You are live. All right. So I don't know if anyone's here, but maybe they'll watch the recording. So let's get started. So the original idea was we were going to have someone who loved the book, someone who liked the book, me who was disappointed in the book, and then Nico who hated it so much he burnt all the books. That's how he over Christmas he wanted to have a little fire. He just threw all of his Sanderson books in there. So
Something like that.
yeah. But the end result was we couldn't get the person who loved the book. Jordan, I don't think liked it as much as I thought he was going to like it. So this is going to be a bit of a rant, discussion. So
Yeah.
I gave it 3 stars. Jordan, you gave it 3 stars, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
And
did.
Nico, you DNF'd on what, day 2?
I was like 80 pages in.
80 pages in.
So not
Which is
particularly.
like probably still on day 1.
Chapter 10,
Yeah,
I think, was the chapter. That particular chapter was where I'm just like, But when I think about the decision, I feel good. Not great, but good. But after the week I've had, I just, I don't know that great's going to happen. So definitely good though. So I was just making a bad reference to Kaladin's opening monologue, but come on, guys.
It didn't stand out enough to remember that.
I have very little to call from. So.
You'll be able to talk about the things that we mentioned.
I'm sure.
Like, my opinion reading those first 10 chapters was kind of like he knew he was releasing the first 10 chapters before it was going to actually be published, or however many he released. So it's like, let's make sure nothing actually happens. This is all going to be just filler for 10 chapters. And then we'll try and start the story. But at that point, it was already pretty bad, and it took a while to get going. And then for me, I honestly, like Adolin, his point of view was the only good one from my perspective. He carried the book. The problem is, which I mean, one good point of view in any book usually isn't a good sign. Even worse when you have like 10 to 15 point of views if there's only one entertaining one. So that's where I'm at. I liked about 1/10 of it.
You must have just missed the intro where it's like they're 3 stars. I DNF'd. So it's not the best sentiment.
No.
A pretty disappointing result.
Let's see. Dalinar's.
I do feel like.
Sorry. Dalinar's whole plot was just world building, filling in all of the gaps of the history. And for me, it was like, it was better not knowing that information. Leaving it a mystery was more engaging than, here's everything that happened exactly.
Or they could have done it in like interludes in like books 1 to 4 to try and get you to piece the puzzle together.
Right. Instead of the whole history in one book. Yeah, exactly.
That feels very Dalinar. That he spent a lot of Oathbringer just like, rehashing the same thing with people. Like, let's watch this cutscene all together now and see if it gets the point across.
Worst decision Brandon made was making Dalinar and Navine the main character. Yeah. Venli was a very rough point of view too. And Shallan with the Ghostbringers, it was like, all right, this plot has just been beat into a pulp at this
Mistborn
point.
Era 3.
Yeah.
Mistborn Era 3 is the Ghost
Mistborn Era 3 might actually be better or more engaging, hopefully, because it's actually Kelsier, or I'm assuming it's Kelsier, and like deep ghost bloods. It's not just Shallan still chasing after the same ghost blood and
Fair.
little knife. Are you really going to try and kill me now? And just over and
I'm
over
sorry, I
and
was laughing
over
at the
again.
next comment. It's a really great book. It just needs work on everything. Literally everything.
Yeah, it's plot, pacing, character development, more fun. Gross twist, emotional impact. Yeah. Yeah, that. Hey, Alex. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of my most disappointing things. Is in all of the first four books, you can point to at least one, if not several scenes where there's like a huge emotional impact.
Mm.
Like
The
in
Sanderson triumphancy.
right, like Oathbringer, uh, the Fall of Elhokar. Like when I'm rereading that, like I almost want to stop at that point because I know what's going to happen. I know how tragic that is going to be. And he wasn't even a character I liked.
Yeah.
Now you take Wind and Truth. There was never any like emotional impact. Like
The reason being, I find, is like Sanderson was really good at like like the honors that I'll see what I can do. Like Calvin jumps into the arena and that builds it right up. But in this book, it just seems like if it was done the same way, it'd be like Calvin would be like honors that I'll see what I could do, and then I'll jump to a cutscene of like Dalinar wiping his butt and be like, "Storms, I got no toilet paper," and then Lit's like in the corner like laughing, "Ha ha ha! I took it, you for your flabby butt." Like I don't know, it's just like it doesn't flow. It just cuts to a completely different person whenever something cool is about to happen. There was no
yeah,
momentum.
yeah. One of my pet peeves in fantasy in general is too many POVs, and I see this with self-pub books a lot, where it'll be a 300 to 400 page book, but it'll have 6 to 9 POVs, and it's like you don't spend enough time with any one character to build momentum and really get invested in the story. And my example that I've always used is Way of Kings is 1,000 page book. It has 4 POVs. So it's like, why do you need those 6 to 9 POV characters? And then Wind and Truth comes along, and here's 15 to 20 POVs for you to follow along. We're just going to stay with each one for a few pages and then jump anytime it might possibly get exciting. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Kaladin's
keep laughing at all of the comments. So Kira's killing me, and then we have Wisha who showed up immediately. Was like, "Nope, this is not for me." Which super nice about it. Appreciate
right.
it, but also John Stormlight.
Yep.
Uh,
Yes. Thanks for being respectful.
you could get mad, but you're just like, "Oh no, this isn't for me," which is fine.
Right.
But
Yeah, I almost put
yeah.
in the title rant discussion. Or maybe I did put rant discussion. I went to do it
No,
once and then I had to start over again. So now I don't remember which one I ended up with. But yeah, Kaladin's therapy subplot. You take one of the greatest warriors in all of fantasy and have him play a flute during fight scenes.
hey now, the best therapist in the Cosmere. He solved thousands of years of emotional trauma in just days.
Yes. Yes.
I
Not
so,
on
yeah,
one person, but like multiple people in days. The key ingredient is stew.
When he wasn't reading the top 100 lines. Were there any of those moments when he wasn't reading those lines?
I'm trying to be coherent. I just keep laughing. I keep reading down the comments and just laughing. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
not
I think
the
you are,
best.
Alex. I
But
saw someone's review on Goodreads, and I don't know if they DNF'd it or how far they got into it, but it was something like if you like listening in on people's therapy sessions, and or if listening in on other people's therapy sessions makes you horny, this is the book for you.
Ooh.
It's like, based on the first 2 days, especially with all the relationships that just suddenly we're going to focus on relationships now when it hasn't been a focus in the series the whole time.
Yeah,
What are you
I
doing?
do. And I know I will say, because this is controversial, and I absolutely get why. And even when in the moment I didn't expect him to do it, I do think Kaladin should have died in Rhythm of War. I feel like his arc hit its peak. And at
Right.
that moment, it would have been tragic if it would have happened, but you would have been like, oh, that's so sad. But yeah, it's just no matter what it wasn't enough. But we take him to that point and then magically take him back down, literally in the story, magically take him back down, and then just be like, you're just gonna kind of sit here and be sad but do nothing now. And it's just like you're taking a character, and for me, Kaladin, favorite character. I mean, I still Bridge 4 tattoo and everything. Like, so that's where it's just like, it's not like I'm a hater. But I feel like with his POV immediately, with being after the prologue, the first POV, it's just like, this isn't Kaladin. This isn't the same character, and everything for me just felt so different. And it was jarring. It did at times. I didn't actually say this in my video because I was trying to be nicer about it, but it felt like fan fiction to me, more than it felt like this was an actual Stormlight or Sanderson book. And it was so jarring that I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. And I can't imagine forcing myself through 1,300 more pages of this. And so I put it down, and I found I'm like, I never got tempted to pick it back up. I never go like, oh, I at least want people to tell me how it ends. I'm just like, no, I never really got that feeling. And so that was kind of the nail on the coffin. I'm like, if I really don't even care enough to be curious, that's kind of the worst sign.
Right. Yeah, I had gotten to the point where I'm like, just tell me if these predictions all came true. 'Cause,
Yeah. I remember like telling Patrick like during my read through, I'm like, Kaladin doesn't feel the same. Like for some reason he felt more like Shallan to me than Kaladin. Like the entire time, and I said it like multiple times, like Kaladin don't feel the same.
yeah, let's dance and play the flute, and that's all we're gonna do. Happy
Yeah.
thoughts.
Well, Cosmere's greatest therapist.
Right. 10 days left. Let's not worry about anything else that's going on. Let's just dance and play the flute and find joy in ourselves. That just seemed so realistic. Let's see, the world is gonna end. Right. Like I expect it to be faster paced because the world is gonna end in 10 days. Not well, we have time to walk around and get in touch with our feelings, and Wit is now going to start sleeping with Yasna because that's not creepy at all. Having someone who's what 10,000 years old sleeping with about a 30-year-old, not wrong at all. And add
Cranking the food.
nothing to the plot. Alex and I were talking about this specifically earlier, and she brought up something. It's like, okay, if in Era 2 we find out that Yasna had Wit's kid, like that's the only way I could see making that relationship relevant. Otherwise, it added nothing to the story. And if that is the case, probably would have been better to. I guess you can't announce it during book 5 because it was only 10 days long, so probably wouldn't have known. But
Yeah,
it
well, I
just
feel
felt so
like
weird.
it seems like, because I have heard a lot of complaints, having a prominent negative video. I saw a lot of complaints, and I was responding to every comment for a while until it got too exhausting, and I stopped. But it feels like it went kind of the sitcom route, where, you know, a lot of sitcoms, they start like, this is the premise, but then they go on long enough, it just like they've used up the premise, and now it's just about the characters and the relationships that they're in, or they're starting new relationships. And you know, you see that with most sitcoms where it's like, it's more about this now because we've gone on long enough that, you know, we've kind of run our course. And it sounds like that's just, we were doing a lot of that where we're like, you know what, instead of really moving the plot forward, let's just drop everybody into relationships. That we're going to shift focus there on that, because I just need to kind of get everybody here so I can finish and then get to the back half to do other stuff. And when you especially have, like, obviously this isn't the end, but it's meant to be the end of the first arc. It's meant to be momentous. It's meant to be
Right.
a huge thing. And just to have so many people come in, and even the people who like, hey, I liked this, but it was really long, and you know, I didn't really like this, that, like, even like a lot of the people who really like loved it, I feel like still had so many complaints. And it just feels like there, you know, there's just an air of disappointment that I got from even the people who liked it and were like, hey, you know, I really liked it, but yeah, all of these complaints make sense and that kind of thing. And it's just it's sad, you know. I wish I would have enjoyed it and been there. I really do, but it just was not to be.
Which I think that's why, for me, Adelin's point of view was the one that I connected with, because there was action, there was new things happening, the story was still progressing. It wasn't
Yeah.
just a repeat of everything that happened with less action and less emotional attachment, which is what the rest of the POVs were.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Adolin was it actually felt like Adolin. Like,
Right.
I found everyone else didn't feel like the character that Sanderson wrote them as for for the whole series, basically. I don't know. I think it's just the whole 10-day plot line, and where he's trying to do like this massive Sanderlands, but it's just becoming a Sander snowball. Like, because it's just chopping up the story, and you just don't get any emotional build up. You don't get any emotional connection. But I don't know why, but Adrian just worked.
So you're telling me with the Sanderlanche versus Snowball was that he was going for a high storm and basically just got the weeping.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So Yasna's debate, since there was a comment on that. Nico, you didn't get to this part, but Odium
Nope.
is basically like, yeah, I'm not actually going to attack the city. I'm just going to convince them to sign an alliance with me. Actually, I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to let Yasna do that. I'm going to make Yasna spin in circles so that she ends up convincing, I'm blanking on her name, the one leader to sign an agreement with me. And that debate, I think Jordan actually
Queen
enjoyed the
Fen?
debate. Yes.
Okay, that was a shot in the dark. So
That was exactly exactly right. Um, but one of the things Odium does is shows that Yasna will do anything to protect her family, which even means potentially assassinating Fan if she thinks that's the right thing to do, and she will throw away the alliance for the good of her family and her city, and just all this ruthless stuff that Yasna will do and what she deems the greatest good for her family. And it's like, if that's the case, and that's the argument for why you can't trust Yasna and why you shouldn't stay part of the coalition, why wouldn't Yasna just kill Fen right then? They had troops in the city. These are Radiant. So you could have killed them, captured the capital, and hey, now they rule that whole land. But instead, she's like, "Oh no, I lost the debate. I'm just gonna walk away now and go cry because I got outsmarted by a god."
in comments I'd seen reference to people not liking the Yasna debate. I had no idea what it was, and that sounds so dumb to me. So I'm just like, that's where I'm just like, really? That's what? Okay, but I feel like too. But another thing with, I'm really trying hard, just for the record, you in the comments, to pronounce names correctly, because I pronounce pretty much every name wrong in the Stormlight Archive, and I read it too many times physically without knowing the correct answer to change. So it's hard for me, but I am trying. So with Yasna, though, is because she was another character where in Rhythm of War felt like we were in some ways trying to like really push her forward as main character, where she was a character in book 1, but then she was gone, and then she's suddenly back, and then now she's our first fourth ideal person, and like really trying to push her forward. So then it feels like what I'm extrapolating from that is that maybe we're trying to like, I really, really need to get her involved more and really make her involved, even though if it doesn't make sense. But it's just that, that's another thing too. Like you said, Patrick, where when there's too many characters, there's too many POVs, and then you're trying to add more in, there's too many mouths to feed sometimes for the page count. That's why the page count keeps going up, but then it can still be difficult to do and to try to throw in those characters and have them work. And I mean, I feel like she could have been an interesting character, but she was never the most complex character, even in book 1. She was more kind of the, I'm very smart and complex, but I'm not, not really that complex kind of thing.
Right.
So.
My mind is very much made up. So there is no question from her about what's right, what's wrong. So there is no internal conflict with her, which makes her a simple character. Like she can be smart and simple at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jordan, do you have anything to add? Because I know you liked the debate more than I did.
I did, but I don't know. It's more so like probably just like recency bias at the time. Like I probably still need more time to think about it. Like I did like it, but I mean it's like obviously like the most amazing debate I've ever read. But I don't know. I didn't mind the twist that that Taravangian just threw back at Yasna. But
Right.
yeah, so
You
I did
got to
enjoy it.
balance
But I
with
mean,
some positive stuff.
yeah,
You must bring balance to the stream. Sure.
Right.
The responsibility is on your shoulders.
me and my 3-star rating. Let's go.
You were a positive 3-star rating. I was a negative 3-star rating.
Hey, still pass.
Yep. And then
I
Nico, again, burning all of his Sanderson books.
My.
I did get rid of pretty much all of my Sanderson books, but I sold them for money on Pango. So I didn't burn them, but these are, I got my leather bounce because I love these books. These are the golden era,
Right.
but I thankfully stopped buying them after Way of Kings, which in retrospect was the correct choice for me. And so
Yeah.
it's worked, but I mean, I legitimately don't know that I will read Sanderson in the future because I'm not picking Wind and Truth back up, so that's Stormlight out. But then if Stormlight is out, that kind of takes away the rest of the Cosmere because the bulk of the Cosmere is going to be in Stormlight. And so
everything was
it's
connected.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's something too. And I know there were a lot of complaints about that through Stormlight well before this as well, which is where just kind of like seeing where things were going. I was already kind of spinning my wheels with like, why am I not more excited for Wind and Truth as it was coming out? Because I was higher on Rhythm of War than most people, mostly because I'm a Kaladin fanboy, and his plot line, although annoying at points, got to me at the end, and that peak moment was enough at the end for me to really pull me back in. But it's just, we're really, really pushing that. And you started to get a lot more of that in Rhythm of War, where we're like, we're really going to focus on the Cosmere. And I think the note, there was a comment, which I don't remember who said it, but there was a comment about how the magic got a little bit too explained and crazy in Rhythm of War. I think part of that too, though, is Stormlight has started to, or maybe even with Wind of Truth fully, become, it's not its own series anymore. It is just the Cosmere show. And so that's where I feel like with all of the science, that's getting ready for the sci-fi Cosmere books, because we're probably going to be basing on that. And like, so a lot of that stuff with Rhythm of War is getting stuff set up for what's going to be coming next. And just like, in Era 2 Mistborn at the end, there's a tease about stuff on Rashar. And it's just like, it feels like Stormlight has become more like, I'm going to push all of the Cosmere stuff here, and that's what we're focusing on. And I don't really care about what was going on Roshar anymore. That's not important. Now it's the Cosmere show. And so that's where I feel like that's going to potentially, turn off.
Right. Yeah. I had my thoughts were, I do think for this book specifically, you didn't need as much background Cosmere information as you did for Rhythm of War. So although obviously huge Cosmere implications and talk about the other worlds and the other gods, I think if someone was going in blind to the rest of the Cosmere, this book would have been easier to follow along with than Rhythm of War would have been. And definitely easier than Lost Metal would have been. With that said, I would have preferred at least the first sub-series in all of them to be like, no one knows anything about the Cosmere, and then at the very end of the last book for each sub-series, then it kind of reveals, oh, there's something else out there. Like Dalinar becomes Honor, and then at that point he sees, oh, there's 16 gods. And so that anyone could have read any sub-series to begin with. Like, I have a friend that started reading Way of Kings earlier this year. And it's like, well, that's great, but now you really should read Warbreaker before you read Words of Radiance. If you don't, not that big of a deal, but is a bit bigger of a deal if you don't read it after that. And then if you read through Oathbringer, okay, now you're going to need to stop and read 6 Mistborn books. Then you can read Rhythm of War. Then you can read the 7th Mistborn book, and then you can go back and finish Stormlight. And oh yeah, there's Elantris in there too, which that kind of comes up in Rhythm of War as well. So here's your 20 massive books you have to read in order to get through this 5-book series you thought you were picking up. That. Oh.
Is Nico's
You
mic
went.
staying on?
Oh. Yeah, we can't hear you, Nico.
Okay, I have no idea what actually happened, but you should be able to.
You're back.
Okay,
You're back.
I'm gonna pay attention to my sound monitor now. I have no idea. I've completely changed the way everything's set up, but apparently the mic cable is still a problem. Maybe I need a new mic cable. But anyway, I'm not entirely sure what I cut off, but basically I was just saying, I do get where you're coming from with that, and I think to an extent that makes sense. And he at least was upfront that Stormlight was always going to have a lot of Cosmere stuff, but I feel like it went from being like you could get extra Easter eggs or you could see the bigger picture if you knew, to being a little bit more of a focus
required. Yeah,
because there was a lot of it in a lot of stuff in Rhythm of War that just wouldn't have made a lot of sense and felt like almost out of place even if you didn't know what it was because you were meant to. But then like even the prologue in Wind and Truth was just like, how many Cosmere names can we drop in a sentence? Like it was just like, and so kind of there. So it really went to that point. I think it would have made sense to keep at least the first arc, to really treat it like its own series and treat the second half as kind of, this is the Cosmere series too. I think probably would have helped, versus just kind of really changing what it is in the midst of it. Because that's how it ended up kind of feeling.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Comment. So Dalinar's ending. So how the story ends, Nico.
I say this also makes no sense to me without context.
Is Dalinar becomes Honor, but
Naturally.
he has the option of forfeiting or destroying Gav, because Odium, through time magic with the cognitive realm, traps Gav in there, shows Gav all of the horrible things Dalinar has done in his life and how he treated Elhokar. So Gav hates Dalinar and becomes Odium's champion, which Dalinar is obviously not going to fight him. So he has two lose-lose options. And then he
So my
decides,
prediction was technically right, is what I'm hearing.
that was one
so
thing. It's like,
the two biggest theories that were going around were proven true.
yes.
So
That
Gav
I
was
read
the
the
king.
prologue and I'm like, yeah, he's going to be Odium's champion 100% somehow.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Well, as soon
I
as he
mean,
was thrown into the cognitive realm, that solidified that theory, right? And then, and Kaladin became Herald. So that's the
Which was,
two, like,
yeah.
so
two biggest ones.
anyways, Dalinar decides it's not necessarily, he has the option of just going back on his word, denying his oaths. So I'm not going to do this contest, which then he loses the power of honor when he does that. And everything that was holding Odium into Rashar, all of that is canceled. Basically, Odium is free to go wherever he wants. And while he's doing this, there's like a whole storm coming through, and to protect Gav, he sacrifices himself, jumps on top of Gav so that his body is taking the beating of it, and he dies from that. But Odium, because there's so many stories of the Blackthorn, is able to bring the Blackthorn back to life to be his general for the Cosmere. So he doesn't get Dalinar, but he gets the Blackthorn just because of all the memories and stories about him. And like, all right, that gets into this doesn't seem like a hard magic system anymore. And now you're just magicking your way into what you want to happen. And like they said, kind of killed any emotional impact knowing that Dalinar in some form is still out there and not really dead, even if the good part of him is dead.
It's his evil twin brother.
Yeah, his evil twin brother.
I just okay, but like, so not even anything with the magic system, but just like, that sounds so dumb to me. That sounds like a plot that would be on like the Power Rangers in the 90s, where like Tommy gets like knocked out, but then evil Tommy's like, that's just sounds
And then he
so.
comes back as the White Ranger.
That's like, but seriously, like, I mean, I can't believe that. Oh my gosh. I like I said, I didn't really care a whole lot about the ending, but now I'm just, you guys have absolutely, just so you know, made it even more abundantly clear that DNFing was the right choice for me. Because yeah, I just this is dumb. I did also laugh, and I assume it's a real comment, but that Dalinar decides oaths are bad, but promises are good, which was so freaking cheesy. That I imagine that's really in the book.
That was
I
not
have it tattooed on my
Dalinar, that
butt.
was Adolin. Because Adolin, he gets the question again, why aren't you a Radiant? And he basically ends up saying, because I don't believe in oaths. Just because you say you're going to do something doesn't mean you should always do it. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes the right thing to do is to admit you're wrong and move on and just try to do better. And then it goes back to the whole Dalinar's comment about sometimes a hypocrite is just a man, whatever the whole quote is. Kind of ruined it for me, this book.
So Kyra mentioned Dalinar's gambit was to give Odium honors shard as well. So basically the whole point, like, all the other gods in the Cosmere weren't like going to do
Right.
anything about Odium. They didn't want to do anything about it. So Dalinor's gambit was to make Odium more powerful. So then they have to focus their attention on him.
Right.
Because
So
at least
like
when he was
that part I did like that concept of,
yeah,
you know what, Rashar has been battling Odium for thousands of years. Honor against Odium. Neither can leave, and none of the other shards are coming to help because as long as he's trapped there, who cares? Which was kind of like
exactly.
Whit's point of view too. Just leave him there. He's trapped. The amount of damage he can do is limited. But then once Dalinar breaks that oath, the agreement between them is void. Odium can go anywhere, which means, all right, now all the other shards have to pay attention, which also means Odium, instead of being 1 against 2, if you count cultivation, now he's 2 because he has honor and Odium, 2 against 14. It's like,
So I can appreciate that that's unexpected. I just am struggling to feel like Dalinar would really make that choice, being the character that he is. Because like the whole, I get it too that it's a play. Dalinar learning about going back on his word, being sometime appropriate. So it's like it's meant to be a character moment for Dalinar, and I can kind of get that, but it also just feels a bit out of character to me that that's the choice he would make. Um, like fight because it's not even quite a like finding a way to win without fighting or anything either. But so I don't know how I feel about that. The other parts I still think were kind of dumb. But it's just I don't know, but again, that feels like it's just setting up, well, Odium's gonna be free to run around, so it's just setting up future books. It's not really a climax for this book, it's just setting up future books is how that feels to me.
right.
And I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that overall.
To me, the ending with that setup, it kind of felt to me like the moment between Infinity War and Endgame, where it's like, this is an ending, but it's obviously not actually the ending. So he did, which I think was his goal, was this is a mid-series finale, so this is the ending, but obviously there's going to be more to come. The problem is the rest of the book felt more like Thor Love and Thunder, just trying to be goofy and not all that complex or all that good compared to what we had come to expect from the series. So let's see.
I really wish I could. I don't want to, but you guys will never read it. But I don't know if anybody watching will. But if I could spoil the ending of the second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, because both the first trilogy and the second trilogy deal with him having to fight against Lord Foul, who's like, the evil dark force that, how do you beat something that's so much bigger than you? And both of them handle it so much better than what you've explained to me happens here, including the second Chronicles, which I actually thought was really clever with the different way that it did it and had it happen. And it just was so much better with a somewhat similar concept. Yeah, well, and that's it. That's the other thing I'm hearing too, is that there was so much setup where this was meant to be an ending, and you can play there are neither endings nor beginnings in the Wheel of Cosmere, but it's still like this was supposed to be an ending. And I've heard a lot of, hey, we're in the same boat, Drop Pocket. We're in the same boat. So, okay, as an aside, I've thought about this a lot. Getting this tattoo is part of the reason I DNF Stormlight. And the reason is, before I got the tattoo, I had to really think, do I want this on me forever? Do I, it's a series that's not finished. And I had to think about it. And I'm like, you know what? Even though I do kind of see the series going downhill, Way of Kings as an individual book means so much to me, is such an experience to me that I'm happy having this, even if I don't read the rest of this year. I had to like actively make that decision. And then as things got closer, and that I still never really thought I would do it, but I had to kind of accept that that might be an okay thing to do for me. And so it's funny that that sign of like something permanent about how much I love that character and those plot lines was also, I think, a little bit of a sign, because I had to have that conversation in my head. So my little tidbit.
Yeah. So I would like to mention that, like, so the whole point of this book was for the Contest of Champions. Basically, the whole series was building up to this. So, like, I'm just going to go all like cultural geography on you, but like, uh, one of my profs when I was doing my geography degree, he talked about like the main arterial road in my town leads all the way up to this small house, and is like down in Dom's house. So it seems like Stormlight Archive, it was like building up for this Contest of Champions. Like all this energy was put into this Contest of Champions, and you don't get a fight. You get a moral dilemma. And it's crazy because, like, I thought I seen Sanderson say, like, he wrote the best fight scene he's ever written, ever. And I thought it was going to be massive because, like, I mean, he finished Wheel of Time and all that. I was like, holy crap, this is going to be intense. And where was it? I mean, Oathbringer probably had a better fights, better action sequence than Wind and Truth, to be honest. But yeah, it's just like
better action sequence than Wind and Truth.
Sorry?
So all of the books had a better action sequence than Wind and Truth had.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just like all this energy was put into this Contest of Champions, and it just like fizzled out.
Yep.
It feels like the whole idea of the Contest of Champions too is just maybe he was locked in a little too much to the whole 10-day thing and to the Contest of Champions. And that's what he had to do. And so I wonder if it was partially, it's just he knew he had to do that, but he had so many other things that he wanted to do. So he was trying to figure out a way to make it work and to really stretch it. But if he wouldn't have locked himself quite into that, or like had that start like halfway through the book or something, or, just found a way to not have that be the entire book. Because I feel like it's a different type of pacing. And so already I feel like it was, instead of doing like, he usually splits them into like 4 parts, 4 books each one, and this was more the 10 and just really really expanding a lot. So
Yeah, the 10-day sequence killed the book, in my opinion. Like, it's cool in concept, but I think it killed the book.
Right, you have some like, this is what's happening immediately after the Contest of Champions. But no, we got the Contest of Champions
after that too.
It tells you some things that happen. Like, one of them is, again, time dilation happens, where they're like a day on Rashar is like a month for the rest of the Cosmere, or something like that. Or I think I have it right. That one they experience one day in the Cosmere is like several months or something like that. So at one point, Keltier is actually having a conversation with Shallan through Seon, and he's like, yeah, I have to come back every couple days when I actually get your response, because of how slow time is moving in Rashar right now.
So I guess that's maybe that it was actually genius, because it was him writing the time dilation about how long it feels to read each day in the sequence.
Yes.
I am just now realizing, because I forgot what shirt I was wearing, but I should have at the very beginning, when Carrie asked what the feeling of the podcast, or the podcast that's live was just gone. Frowny face.
Yeah, that pretty well represents it. But yeah, the end, you could get a high level of Wit seems like he's basically on Earth. Um, you get that
You
Odium
mean
is kind of
Yolen?
what was that?
You mean Yolen, which is definitely
Mm,
not Earth?
mm. Seemed like Earth to me. Um, including bringing in Earth words like therapist.
Yep.
Where's the comments? There's a comment earlier. And I've been jumping around because we've fallen behind the comments, but someone mentioned
Therapist.
like
Let
one
me
of the
put
worst.
therapist.
I got so many comments about that, and like, yeah, I there were even, like I said, I know I DNF'd early, but there were already words, phrases, things that just didn't fit. And I do think, because I feel like it needs to be said, because Sanderson, his whole excuse, I've heard him say that, oh, well, they're not actually saying that. This is just being like translated to you. It is such an excuse for lazy writing, and it's
Right,
not something he's done before. It's not like that's the way if he had always written like that and just said that
right.
was his stance, that would be one thing, but to just suddenly change, because I mean, like, there were some examples in some of his early work where he did that. Like, so many people have called out that they use hors d'oeuvres in Warbreaker, which obviously doesn't make sense, because a French word when French isn't a language. But it's like you've always done it, like with the curse words and everything. You've always made everything specific to the world building, and that's that focus on creating these really high fantasy, epic fantasy worlds was such a big part of the draw for me, and I think a lot of other people, I'm sure, too.
Right.
But so just to all of a sudden be like, no, I'm just going to write it however I want now, and that's my excuse, is just that it's being translated. It comes off as so lazy. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, there was, because early on, even there was horse shit was said. And I'm just like,
Yes.
if you're going to say that,
And
at least say like chol, or, I mean,
right.
because it's just, again, it doesn't, it's things that just don't make sense. And like, he played with it a little bit because he would have Wit, who obviously has been to other worlds and could make references to stuff. Because like, there wasn't actually one of the rare actually funny lines where he's like, a bunny rabbit is hopping, and Kellen's like, what's that? He's like, okay, a disgusting crab thing, and it was actually like,
Right.
that was actually a funny line, because it's poking fun at how alien this world is. But then you take that away, and you're like, now it's just 21st century Earth, in America, and that's where
Right.
this takes place now. And it's just the mystery, the magic, the high fantasy epic feel is just gone for me.
Right. Yeah. Same. Like the swear specifically really pissed me off because I also know like all three of us have kids, and Sanderson is someone that we can listen to out loud with their kids around and could always feel safe about what's going to be said. Sure, there's things like taking the carapace off the enemies to use as armor, but they're not going to understand what that is. But if you have a scene of a kid saying the word shit because they heard it somewhere else, and then saying, you're right, maybe I shouldn't be using that because now this 5-year-old kid is saying it. And then they go up to their grandma and they're like, Grandma, what does shit mean? That's the type of things that like our kids will pay attention to. And then they'll be asking us. So to throw a swear in when you haven't used swears in the Cosmere, and someone did point out to me then Words of Radiance, Adolin does say that he has knowingly shat himself during a battle. So again, a line where Sanderson's trying to be funny. Like
Mm.
it takes you out of the story. It kind of you have thousands of pages of established way of writing, and you're going against it now.
Yeah.
So,
And that's
and then
where
at the
for
end of
me
the
it's
book, there's a line where they say, "Let's kick some ass," and it's like there were plenty of opportunities earlier in Stormlight, or in Mistborn, or in Warbreaker, or in Elantris to say that line. It's never been said before. So it's like,
Doesn't Navani say
bringing that
bastard
in.
in Rhythm of War?
What was that?
Doesn't Navani say bastard in Rhythm of War? When
Possibly.
she's like, journey before destination, you bastard, and stabs Moash.
I think my internet cut
Yeah.
out for a second there. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Make
we
sure?
can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything froze for a second, so I just want to make sure I was still here.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
Yeah.
the thing with the squares for me too was it wasn't necessarily even the fact that it's in there; it's that it broke immersion because, and see, like that's a term though that can make a lot of sense. It has different meanings, things like that too. So like it's not even that it's there. Like, I'm not offended by swears. And I totally can get where you're coming from, Patrick, with where, if you expect something to be the generally appropriate and then now it suddenly has other stuff, I can get that. But because I think a lot more about what I'm playing now that I have a kid and everything too. But it's just like it's things that don't fit or just feel
Right.
very out of place, because you can do that and have it work, but it's like you've established that they have their
Right.
own words and their own curses. And that's what I think, some people have never liked that. Some people have always thought that was dumb with Sanderson, but I've always thought like it works because it's just an extra way of the world building. I mean, Jordan did it and I thought it worked well because it was just they had their own things to say there too. And that's where it's like personally I just feel like when you're throwing in stuff in book 5 in these massive books in this big series that just feel super different and off and not the established lore, it comes off as either hugely like amateurish or just lazy if you're gonna just excuse it.
Yeah, definitely.
The juvenile humor early on, not even necessarily with Lift, it just felt like all of the humor was Lift. Because like I DNF'd at the infamous chapter 10 with the whole Chol conversation with Syl, and I'm just like, this is just so childish, and that was the point where I'm just like, I don't care.
Aelin. Yeah. Aelin, again, he was the one storyline that was good. It's the only one that really felt like Stormlight.
Yeah. I did like Seth. I liked his point of view. Although I liked Seth and him as a character, but his story was a bit off because it felt like, let's go defeat these 10 gym leaders to get the Elite Four badge, like from Pokemon or something like that, right? But I found Seth was really fun, and his journey and his flashbacks were good, much better than Bentley. And yeah, Paladin wasn't the best, but trying to think who else.
Zigzil, like
Sigil. So I didn't
I
like it at
kind of
first.
like
Loved it at the end.
right. At first, it was almost too much of a rehash of okay, this is just Kaladin's old storyline. He's basically just going through the same thing of
I could see
my
that.
best friend is killed and trauma from that, and I'm not good enough, and but then at the end, his point of view made me want to go back and reread Sunlit Man.
Yes.
More
Same.
than continuing the Cosmere, this book made me want to reread the Sunlit Man,
Yeah.
That's still
which
a
is not a
positive.
great thing. Yeah, it's a slight positive that it did one thing.
Well, you
The
know
main
how
goal I
he gets
kind of
to.
struggled with.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is you get to know why he's called the Nomad,
Right.
because he's just wandering around now.
Yep. Let's see.
Yeah, I believe he's supposed to be a pretty important character in later. I heard about that one, and that also was just like, what? Why? It was that and the one with the Queen. Uh, I heard about those scenes, and because somebody told me, just being like, oh gosh, you would have hated this scene. They were right. Oh gosh, but yeah, Sigzil is supposed to be, I think, a very important character, a main character in the back half or something. Um, yeah, Kyrie got it too. Oh goodness, I do feel like. See, I was looking forward to Zeth's flashbacks. I thought that was an interesting choice to finally kind of get, and I think that could have worked really well with the plot line that they're going to the Shin homeland as part of the quest, and like also seeing that paralleled felt like that could have worked. I didn't actually get to a flashback though, so I can't confirm that. But
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed Zet's parts more if we weren't already getting all of those other flashbacks from Dalinar. That it was just too much backstory. Dalinar's whole
I can see
POV
that.
is just backstory, and then probably 3/4 of Zet's point of view was backstory as well. It's like, all
So
right, we got this ticking clock going these 10 days, but we're spending most of the book looking back.
So I'm curious, do you feel it would have worked better? Because it sounds like a lot of it's lore. And granted, assuming you want to know, because I know you said some of it, the mystery, it was not a great thing finding out, but like having just another novella where it's like, here's the backstory that came out either like before this or after something. Like, do you think that would have worked better? Or do you think it just didn't work at all? I'd be curious.
For me, the backstory we got just didn't work at all.
Hmm.
So, like, if you took
How about you,
Dalinar's and
Jordan?
you made it a novella, I think that would have been a horrible novella.
Fair enough.
What about you, Jordan?
I don't know.
Don't mean to put you on the spot. It's just curious.
Je ne sais pas.
I was going to say, the other thing, or another thing, not the other thing, another thing that I was disappointed in with the book is for all the point of views you have, there are some characters that are like beloved characters, and you don't see them like basically at all in this book. So, like the Lopen, he's there for a few lines in the beginning and then a few lines at the end.
Yeah.
In the middle, he's not there.
That's so surprising to me, just because he's meant to be a comedic character, and I've heard so much that there was just the humor was like really pushed. So I guess I would have expected more Lopen, but
Nope.
especially
Yeah.
since he got made more important and relevant in one of the other novellas. So interesting.
No, and you go like
You know what,
1,000
Lopen?
pages without hearing from him. Rock, you have no idea what happens with Rock. You don't hear from him again after he leaves in Rhythm of War. Scar, you don't really see much of him throughout the book. Yeah, most of Bridge 4 you don't see, except for Sigzil and then Kaladin being a therapist.
See, and I as the Bridge 4 fan, this is more bad. Well, good news for me. Since I'm not playing.
Right. So yeah, you don't get Bridge 4, except for Kaladin being a therapist. Oh, and he makes Stu because Stu solves everything, and that's how he gets Zach to
That tracks.
open up. Yeah, that and playing the flute. You ever want anyone to open up to you, just play the flute no matter how badly it is. They will confess everything they've ever done wrong, even if they believe themselves to be right for the last 1,000 years.
Not even play it good. Play it poorly. So next time you're in a fight, just take it the flute and try hot cross buns. Salt. World peace, man.
It's just the amount of things that you said that I'm just immediately like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'm not surprised, but and then some of the things that were quite surprising is just, it's been an interesting mix, because I feel like some things were just like, yeah, obviously this is going to happen, and a lot of the big things that it probably shouldn't have been that obvious, but seemed that way. But then there was just some of the other things. I'm just so have you guys seen those videos? It's like the crappy flute playing. It's like a recorder. It'll show something and have the really bad recorder playing, because that's what I'm picturing Cal doing now. And
The Jurassic Park theme with the recorder is playing in my head right now.
There's like My Heart Will Go On. There's one. Oh gosh, but
Yeah, definitely need action. Except not the sex scene kind of action.
I do think the comment about him trying to push off the Mormon label, I made a comment about that, and some people told me that I was extrapolating way too far from a very small sample size, which maybe I was, but it felt like, and everything I've heard about this felt like, he really is trying to be more mainstream and get away from that kind of clean cut thing. Like he's doing what the Disney stars do once they're like 18 and they're like, I'm an adult, I'm not for kids anymore. Like it does seem like that's kind of a push, because that's been something that, to his credit, he's always been very open about. And there was some controversy because he had made comments that a lot of people found very distasteful, and he went back and said, no, I don't feel that way anymore. And then people are like, okay, you've walked back a lot of stuff, why are you still a very, very prominent member, possibly the most prominent member of this church? And he's also been very candid about that and said that he feels like he can do more good for that church and that that group by being a part of it and trying to go for changes and that sort of thing. So he's been very open about it, but then it just also felt like so much about this was very intentionally, I'm pushing away from that. And the comment about horse poop early on was specifically talking about religions, and so it just felt like, even right off the bat, we're like, nope, instead of always being fascinated by religion, we're just going to throw that out there. And so there was some of that stuff where it did really feel like that to me. And I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong or anything with it, but it's also like, if you're going to do that, maybe don't use a very highly weighted for book to do that. Make your personal statements, use your podcast, do whatever, your stuff like that to do it. But I felt like using the book as kind of the place to do that felt weird and forced to me personally. I have heard some people talk about that, and I'm not crazy familiar with the Mormon doctrine by any means. I just know little bits and pieces I've heard, and some South Park stuff as well, which is somewhat accurate from what I've heard. So that's where I heard that. But I'm the kind of person that I find religion in fantasy fascinating, and it's one of the things I've always really actually enjoyed about Sanderson, is the exploration. And it didn't really come up as preachy to me at any point. It didn't feel like he was trying to make me follow his religion. It was just like, hey, I, as an author, I find religion interesting, and I want to write about it in interesting ways and in fantasy worlds. And I really enjoy that. There's lots of other favorites of mine that explore religion in a fantasy setting, and I think it's really great. But then it's just like, you can also go too far with it. And this one felt like it was, instead of exploring that, it felt like it was trying to reference more of that, for sure. So.
Right. Like in Bands of Mourning, I like the conversation that Wax has with Harmony, where he says something like, you can stop the bad things from happening. And he's like, well, yeah, I could save this guy, but then if I save him, he's gonna sneeze and this kid is gonna get sick and the kid's gonna die instead. So what do you want me to do? And Wax is like, well, you could always draw a line and just not let anything worse than this happen. And he's like, and how do you know I haven't done that? Like, I could be stopping even worse things from happening. So
yeah,
like that type of religious thought. And it's like I like that part of it.
Because it's interesting.
It is an interesting thought. It's something for like anyone, regardless of what religion they believe in or don't believe in, can kind of have like an internal debate about that type of topic.
And it's like,
But
you
yeah,
know, another Galatian saga behind me. Part of the premise is there's all these holy orders, but the gods are 100% real and like actual physical entities. And so you like how much that changes a fantasy setting when you have these orders where like the gods are real and they're involved. And, you know, it's like it's stuff that I do find really interesting. So I feel
Boy,
like it
do
was
I have a
lit
book series
humor.
for you.
Cheech Marin.
I'm like, no, I'm reading God Eater right now. It's just like it's got all those things.
I do the fact that 100% Lopen is Cheech Marin and that Sanderson basically admitted it by just saying he is meant to be a Mexican stereotype, which is Cheech. And it's such a funny reference for Sanderson specifically, since all of, you know, his comedy was just about marijuana constantly. And so for that to be who Sanderson chose, but I always would read Lopen's stuff in that voice in my head. Just like, hey, Gancho, you know, all of it in my head. So I'd agree.
yeah, me too. Like I've brought up the swearing and how I don't like in the book, besides the fact that it kind of kicks you out of the story or kicked me out of the story. And people are like, well, it's adult fantasy and he's just making it more adult. And it's like, this was the most juvenile of the 5 books. This is probably the most juvenile Cosmere book I've ever read. And yeah, like
And yet,
Way of Kings is dark, and it was able to be dark, be adult themed without having real world curses in it, without having sex scenes in it. It's like you've
Yeah.
never needed that stuff before in order to classify this as adult fantasy. Why do you need to throw that in there now?
And he has always kind of towed the line with YA and adult fantasy, I feel, especially with his early work, because Elantris, Mistborn feel like they could easily go either way. But they kind of toe the line. You know, they're marketed as adult, but there's something that, you know, a younger reader could pick up. And granted, I started reading Sanderson when I was a teenager. And I'd read, you know, a lot of other stuff before that too. But it's just like it always kind of towed the line. So then when you are this late in the career and then book 5 feels like the most juvenile, you're like, as someone who kind of towed the line, that's not great. But yeah, I mean, it's just,
Right.
and you know, I I've made it very clear on my channel and reviews, I'm not a fan of sex scenes in books. You know, it's not like a deal breaker. It's not like I'm not going to read a book, because plenty of books, including plenty of favorite books, my preference is to just have that kind of be more of an off-screen thing. You can blame Robert Jordan if you want. He spoiled me with having it all fade to black and not having to read any of it. And I so that was the thing that I feel like I got really used to that. But it's just like, yeah, it's more so even just the fact that stuff like that's now included. It's that it feels so not fitting in the story.
Right.
And that's the bigger thing for me. Is like I would have gotten to that and be like, what is, like, I don't like this, but also like, why is this the same? And like the thing I point out, which also was very early on, there's a description of 1000% a like an emo girl, a teenage girl in America today, very early on. And there's the line that, because this is a throwaway, I don't know if they're a character that even reappears, but there's there's a line that she uses her light weaving to give herself edgy tattoos, and I'm just like, what does that even mean on Roshar? Like, what does that mean on Roshar? Can you, because it was obviously meant to be like, oh, I'm just giving you this, you know, fun, putting this person in here for fun. But it immediately, I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. So I still never read the last one. Um, and
Skyward novels.
I won't. They like the first one I thought was pretty decent, and then they weren't very good. But the Jancy Patterson ones were leaps and bounds better, honestly, because I read those. I thought they were a lot better. But I just, when the new one came out, I just didn't really care, and I never read it. I'm probably never going to.
Yeah, I actually had it was one of the things I was thinking is doing all this actual YA writing, is it making it harder for him to write adult fantasy? Are his two different styles blending into one that's not good at either now?
It is interesting,
Like
for
I have no
sure.
idea if that's true, but that was kind of the what I was thinking going through this is like, is he, because he towed the line, and now he's trying to write something that is very much on the other side of the line.
Yeah.
And did that cause him to lose the balance he had?
And so in the comments here, Canon Storyteller, a couple down, mentioning Zahel. So, because that brings up something I was even thinking about too. Literally, when you've done it in the world where if somebody says something that's out of place, it's immediately you pay attention because it's an Easter egg.
Right.
So you would find out like, oh, they used the in-world curse from this other world. They must be a world hopper.
Right.
Yeah, and like that was a thing, you know.
Colors,
like if
boy.
somebody if somebody says merciful Domi, you're like, oh my gosh,
Right.
you're from the Elantris. So it's again, sorry.
We lost your
Oh.
audio.
Oh, come on. Okay, I'm gonna have to get a new cord, I think.
You're back.
Sorry, I keep accidentally looking down at other comments again, and I saw Alex's comment, which I don't think was supposed to be a burn, but it's a great burn. But yeah, so I mean, it's just like you're taking that and the super fans who are used to the level of detail, and you're just now it's like everybody talks like they're just from the US, and so like all of that nuance is kind of gone. Because there are like, I remember, and I only know because I saw it on the wiki after hearing somebody talk about it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like in Way of Kings, in the Pure Lake interlude, there's characters from Mistborn Era 1 that are there for some reason. And I'm like, how did people notice that? Like, I mean, I'm a pretty detail oriented. I would have never picked that up. So like there are people who really do analyze, these hardcore fans, but instead of being, you get people used to that and like, watching for the Easter eggs, like, oh, can I catch the world hopper? And now everybody talks the same, everybody feels the same. And so it's just you like, okay, how does that work? And that's another thing that just is why I don't agree with the, oh, it's being translated thing. Like now you got lazy.
Yeah, the scene with Lift learning the swear word through Zyle, it's like, one, that was meant to be funny, which it wasn't. And two, the other reason is because Zyle comes up later on. And so I think it was a way of, hey, we're just going to remind you this character is here. You need to start asking yourself, what is he doing during these 10 days? And so you could have accomplished that by having Lift say colors. And Gav being like, what are you talking about, colors, sir? Yeah, there are different colors, Lift. I'm not understanding. Oh, it's something Zyle says. It's like, would have accomplished the same thing.
Yeah.
Except would have stayed true to the world. Because he does
100%.
say that in earlier books. But no, he does show up later. He is naked and tied up because that's how he always ends up being introduced to worlds, I guess. He makes a comment that he has to stop getting himself into those situations. No explanation of how he got into that situation.
Lazy writing, that's how.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see.
That's where like I didn't think it was meant to be a burn. It just sounded like it, and it made me laugh. So that's where, like I said, I didn't hate Skyward. I wasn't super into it after the books, but I feel like I still maintain I think Jancy wrote it better than Sanderson did. Just because I liked the ones she did, like the middle ones between book 3. I liked that more than I liked book 2 or 3, I think. So oh yeah, I feel like I forget Moash is still supposed to do something because he just appears so infrequently.
Yeah, he kind of becomes like an inquisitor.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's
his role.
More Cosmere stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Odium admits that he was going to be like the third champion option back when it was Ray's, but Taravangian is too smart for that. Why put him up? He can he can take Dalinar's grandson to be the champion. And then, hey, if not him, I could put any innocent person here. Go ahead, Dalinar. Do you really feel comfortable killing any innocent person? Which,
Uh,
yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
thought of a question, but it's kind of unrelated. So actually, I'm gonna let you finish. It just popped into my head. So I'm sorry.
That was pretty much it. That Taravangian kind of made Moash to be pointless.
I gotcha.
Well, he does.
So I feel
Moash
like,
does kill more Bridge 4.
oh, naturally.
Yes. So that's where I'm like, this seems like a repeat of uh, Kaladin's storyline. Moash kills Sigild's best friend.
Oh, yeah, you
Ah,
did reference that earlier. That makes sense.
like where have we seen this before?
Yeah.
It's-
So the question was, and I assume the answer is no, because it would be too interesting. Because there was speculation that of whether or not Taravangian's curse, where his intelligence changes on different days, would still be in effect as a shard. And I'm assuming that's not referenced, but I feel like that'd be fun because if he went like full, like the low, like drooling level, and as you have like literal god just going around drooling, causing problems, I feel like that could have been actually really funny to me. So
No, that was to
That would
give
have been
him
like the
the
wild card for
exactly.
the Cosmere. Just be like, oh, we're gonna go up against Caravangian, and then he's just like drooling, and he just does something completely off script, and no one can figure or solve how to figure it out. Like that would have been, I would be down for that. Young Caravangian, bring it back. But no,
it ended up being explained that what cultivation was doing was giving him the intelligence so he could kind of prepare for seeing all the information that the shards get to see, but also prepare for all the emotions because Odium is the god of emotions and god of passion. So he needed to be able to handle both sides in order to become Odium, which he did. And then it backfires on cultivation because he thought, oh, this is going to be an Odium I can work with. But he was not.
Honestly, that is a good explanation, and I think that that's actually a good explanation that I think sounds like was handled well. So there is me
Yep.
being positive. That actually I think is a great because that does tie back and make you feel like, oh, so that's what she was doing this whole time. And
Right.
of course, it doesn't work out, but I'm like that those motivations, the actions, the reason that all actually makes a lot of sense to me. So
Right. And then
I'm okay with
to
that.
give you more information, and this is where either I'm forgetting something or didn't pick up on something, or it's just bad writing. Those are the options there. So cultivation basically holds Odium's or Taravangian's family, the people he cared about, hostage. Like,
Mm.
oh, well, you didn't turn out the way I want you to. Well, now you're going to do what I'm telling you to do. Otherwise, I'm going to kill all these people that you care about. So Taravangian sends a tsunami and kills everyone in his city. And he's like, there, now you can't hold anyone over me. Except he actually saves the people he cares about. That's it. So the other
yeah,
shards couldn't see that he saved them. Like,
I was
for all
really
the
trying to give
information you
Sanderson
have,
some credit, and you're ruining it right now, just so you know.
right.
I was really trying. Really trying.
The other thing was, it's like, okay, so there is that. And then going back to Yasna's debate, like that was on like day one or, well, not day one, probably I think like day 2 or day 3. It was very early
yeah,
on.
it's pretty early. Yeah,
And the debate is happening on day 9. Like, so we've gone 6 days without Queen Fen or Yasna hearing from anyone in any type of way that Carbronth is completely destroyed? Because I feel like that would be a good argument for, hey, don't sign an alliance with Odium. He did all of this to save Carbronth, and then once he became Odium, he destroyed Carbronth. How could you trust him if you signed an alliance with him? It's like that news didn't get out anywhere. Like, let's see. Yeah, curse seems to be gone. Let's see. Missing that he secretly saved the city. Well, yeah, stupid. Like, yes, that's what it was. She couldn't stand to witness it, so she looked away. Like, these shards with so much massive information coming to them, she looked away, so she didn't know what was happening.
It's the smallest bit of credit. It's gone now.
Right.
I mean, oh my gosh. Okay, that's just bad writing. I
Yeah.
mean, come on.
And to your point, like, she didn't have to even have that plan. Like, she could have been, oh, I was preparing you. I thought there was a 99% chance that you'd go the way I want you to go. And I didn't have this backup plan of holding your people hostage because, if you didn't go the way I want you to go, the hostages probably aren't going to work on you. So when's it worth it? So you didn't have to have that part of the storyline. Just I want you to have the capacity to understand the emotions and the capacity to understand the information that you'll get as a shard. And my plan backfired. I'm going to go run and hide now.
Yeah.
Except again, because of the oath pact that the three gods had, she couldn't leave Rashar at that point. So she's literally hiding, looking away, blinders on. It's like, it did not work. Listener, yeah, the listener backstory was definitely dull. Idle Mishram was captured. Yeah, that was interesting. Think how that happened and how the Parshendi were created. But it was, to me, it was just too much backstory at that point. Felt bad for the Windrunner leader of the past, yeah. So there was a Windrunner that was working with Idle Mishram. And basically they were coming to an agreement of, we're going to stop the war. And Honor tricks them. So Honor ends up breaking his word, and that's what ends up killing Honor, and giving them a way to trap by Mishram when he had told her that, yes, I would work with you and we will team up against Odium, and you don't have to be Odium's puppet anymore. And then he traps, as a bondsmith, traps Baido Mishram in the gem, and that creates the Parshendi somehow. So it was interesting seeing that part, but the rest of it was just too much. Yeah. You guys have any other topics from the book you wanted to discuss?
Not really. I mean, like, Shallan's point of view was very lackluster.
Yep.
Her mom's a herald. That's all I got.
Right. Which I was trying to remember while I was reading this. It's like, is this still supposed to be a secret, or do we already know this? Because I feel like this is already known, but I'm not sure if it's known because it was just blatantly said earlier in the books, or if it's just been hypothesized enough that it was like, I kind of just assumed it was going to happen. I guess that's a question for you, Nico. Did you know that Shallan's mom was a herald?
I I don't believe that was ever stated before, apparently.
Oh, we lost you.
Yeah, you're breaking up again.
My microphone keeps tilting, and I think it's bumping the cord. Let me tighten it. That's my bad. This is a new setup. This is the first time I'm using this setup, so I apologize for the technical difficulties. I was testing it earlier today and just left it up. But no, I don't believe that has ever actually been stated prior in any of the prior books. Although I do recall seeing theories about it, so I can get that. But yeah, I don't think that was stated, and I also feel like that probably doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's neither here nor there, I guess.
Okay, that's right. Reading these comments. So Honor was actually with I think Honor was working with Baido Mishram. And then Odium actually asks Honor to destroy Baido Mishram. Can't remember because it was a threat to Odium. So I can't remember why Honor went along with it.
It makes a little bit more sense than like intentionally breaking the word and doing all that kind of thing. But
it was kind of the same thing Kaladin did.
That's what I thought of
Words of
immediately.
Radiance, where he promised to protect the king, and then he also promised Moash that he wouldn't get in the way of him killing the king. So he made two conflicting promises, which is what Honor ended up doing. Don't remember the logic of why he agreed to help Odium.
It's just Honor's just a nice guy, you know.
Well, actually, that was like the basis of like who Honor is. What's his name? Tanner. He was supposed to. He's too nice to be Honor.
Did you say Tanner?
Yeah, that's was the actual holder of Honor, the character, and he is in love with cultivation.
Yeah.
Is Odium's real name Kyle? I'm kidding. We're gonna find
I think
out.
he was actually like a tanner, I think, in his previous life.
Like,
and then that's the name that they just call it.
That does make sense, but it just also, I don't know, for some reason that just made me laugh. But
it's symmetrical.
Makes sense. You got here right at the end. I guess to all of the people who commented, you can't really review the book, even though the video was obviously titled "The Problem with the Stormlight Archive" and not with Wind and Truth. You can't review a book that you DNF'd, and I'm like, I just talked about a book I DNF'd for an hour and a half, everybody. So.
All right. And I don't think anything we revealed changed your opinion.
If anything, I'm even more solidified in, which is why I didn't really care about spoilers, because I wasn't going to pick it back up. I returned the book to Amazon. I removed my hold for the audiobook after returning it after DNF'd, and I've unhauled most of my Sanderson books. So I'm pretty well decided. So.
Sanderson does need to either go back to the old editor or get a new one, because like he said on Reddit that like, oh, this is the most editing I've ever done. This storyline is so tight or whatever, with all those tight ends. Like I mean, Rhythm War definitely had issues, and this one has even more issues. So maybe it is the editor. Like someone needs to tell them, they're like, no, this, don't do that. Bad.
Right. 'Cause, yeah. In that Reddit post, like they talked about like, oh, maybe I turned the dial like one or two too modern where it was kicking people out.
Mhm.
I'll have to go back and review, but every scene in the book is exactly how I want it, and I want them all in there. Which
Yeah.
writers think
That's
for, yeah, I hear your complaints. I don't agree with them.
and that's
Too bad.
probably what
It's
he
my
told
book.
his editors.
Right. Right. Which so he needs someone that he respects that will say no to him. That
And
Mhm.
he also needs
he
to
needs more
stop with
friction
the
in
secret
his team.
project.
What was that?
He also needs to stop with the secret projects. Like, it's not exciting now. It's like, oh, sweet, we got four. That's
Right.
neat. You wrote them during the pandemic, awesome. And now there's a fifth one. And guaranteed in a couple of years there's going to be a sixth one. Ooh, I
If it's
secretly
even
wrote
in
it.
a couple of years.
I secretly wrote it while I was on the toilet. Like, boom, here's a new book.
Exactly. He needs
Just like, what? Just fuck it.
an editor that will say, no, we're not publishing this in this state.
Yeah.
But because of the Kickstarter and how much a Stormlight book or a Sanderson book is going to bring in as soon as they publish it, I think not even just the Dragonsteel editors, the Tor editors are kind of at that. We don't want to delay this. We need this income to come in now. So no matter what state it's in, we're gonna publish
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Where,
Well,
what's
that's
it
I
called? The
mean,
George Lucas phenomenon?
the what phenomenon, sorry?
The George Lucas phenomenon, where you just
Oh,
write whatever and then just be like, yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
well, pretty much.
Give me the money.
Yeah. And I mean, like Tor needs him way more than he needs them. He doesn't need them at all.
Right.
If he suddenly didn't have a contract, he'll just publish his own books and make way more money. I
Right.
mean, he's so big that they're not going to push back. And I get it. It's all about money. He's, the probably the most, if not one of the most successful authors, like let alone fantasy, but just in general. There aren't a lot of people that are pulling in what he does with the sales, with all of the other, miscellaneous things, and especially, and then when you go to fantasy, that are still publishing, that are still getting that much. And ultimately, I'm sure he made a ton of money on Wind and Truth, and I'm sure he
Right.
made everybody else a ton of money on Wind and Truth. And there are enough people that love it that I don't think anything's going to change. It's he's doing what he wants to do. He is big enough and important enough that he can get away with doing what he wants to do, and his audience is big enough that he'll still make money doing it. So, in some ways, I'm like, why would you not do what you want to do? But it's just unfortunate when that involves a lot less quality, a lot of really big changes. And, you know, it's kind of like if it, because, for music, there's a lot of thing where, especially I listen to a lot of metal, where people get mad when the artist goes super mainstream and act like they're betrayed. And I'm just like, I don't, I'm totally fine with that. But it's when, like, if you completely change everything about your sound and everything that people liked about you, or you make it super, super different, naturally, that's not going to work for everybody. And that's kind of where I am here, is where I'm like, well, I don't like where it's gone. To me, it's not appealing. But good luck to him. I'm sure he'll continue to succeed. Ultimately, it's not like us complaining about the book for a little bit. It's going to really hurt his bottom line.
Right.
So one of those things.
I do wonder if they will. I don't expect big changes, but I think it was before there were 30,000 ratings. This was already his lowest rated Stormlight book.
Mm.
And when you consider that his other ones are in the hundreds of thousands of ratings, and generally the longer a book goes, the more it's going to fall until it gets to a point where it's like there's just too many for any new rating that comes in to impact the overall rating. So by 30,000, it was already the lowest, and it's still dropping. It's like, if by 50,000, if it starts dropping below his lowest Mistborn wands, when do they start paying attention to, this really wasn't received as well as we thought it was? Yeah, the first 15,000 ratings from the people who loved it, which if you love it, you're going to read it faster, were great. But usually that momentum stays for a Stormlight book for 100,000, not starting to drop at 15,000. So I could see them eventually paying attention to that, but I could also see them paying attention for like 10 days and being like, oh, 4.75. It's the highest rated one. Everyone loves it. Let's move on to the next thing and never look back. So I
And
could
it's
see
still,
both ways happening.
it's still got, I mean, pretty overwhelmingly positive reviews, though. If you look at it, there are less
Yeah.
than 2% of the 35,000 ratings are 2 stars or below, and less than 10% of the 35,000 reviews are 3 stars or below. So still,
But
literally
when you
90%
compare
of the
that to
reviews.
like Rhythm of War, which is the one that people usually list as their least favorite beforehand,
Yeah,
and the longer time goes, the more diluted that initial loved it
oh,
read
for
it
sure.
in 1 week
Yeah,
ratings are going to get. So every time I
People,
look, it dropped by another 0.01, which again, most authors, 30,000 ratings, 4.59 or whatever it's at right now, would be amazing. But that's
well, I
not the
mean,
standard Sanderson has set. Like,
yeah,
if you're known
before
as the
when
guy who wrote the highest rated book of all time on Goodreads, you'd that's raising the bar.
yeah,
And this has fallen well below what the bar is set for this series. So I could see them looking at that and eventually seeing it. But again, I could see them saying, oh, it did great for the first 10 days or the first month. Now we're on to the next thing because we don't have time to spend on any book that was previously published. And we're never going to look back and never going to take any lessons learned. So I think it's going to be more of this latter of not really taking any lessons learned from it, but there's a chance because this is a noticeable drop compared to the standard.
it's true for sure.
and keep in mind, like I looked at the Goodreads score because, like when you click on like want to read or whatever, it like this is like before, like months before when it came out. It had like over like 2 or 3 thousand like 5-star reviews, and the book wasn't even released.
Right.
And I don't think it was from arts. I think it was just people just giving it an instant 5 stars.
Right. Because yeah, I think the arcs did not go out long before the book was actually
No.
published.
And I think it was like thousands of 5 stars already.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is dropping. It's 4.57, which is still phenomenal. But we'll see when more things start coming in.
For sure.
All right. Well, on that note, I know 2 of us have 7-month-olds, so we don't sleep at night anymore, and the other one has 2 kids himself, and it's what 1 a.m., 2 a.m. your time, so
1:10 a.m.
1:10.
Yay!
So I think we're gonna wrap up there. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for joining. Hopefully, some of you enjoyed it more than we did.
Thank you for coming to our roast.
Yes. And we will talk to you next time we have a Cosmere book to roast. Bye, everyone.